Hello, my name is Susan Rahmsdorff-Terry, and I am the costume designer and default hair designer for the world premiere production of DELLA DOUCET at Vintage Theater this fall. I've been designing at Vintage for 11 years, and most recently, you will have seen my work in Glass Menagerie and 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, which featured my lovely husband, Luke Rahmsdorff-Terry, as Vice Principal Pinch. I've been designing it for Vintage for 11 years. The big one that I have on my resume is A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, which was the show that earned me my very first Henry nomination. This is my third world premiere in a year. I've done two others in the last year, so I'm getting to feel very comfortable walking into a world premiere right now. The biggest difference between designing for a world premiere versus designing for something that everybody has seen at least once is really the fact that nobody has a preconceived notion of what this is going to look like, except possibly for the playwright and the director. These characters are often being built as the play is in rehearsal, and I can occasionally make suggestions to say, you say in the play that you're describing this person as being very buttoned up, but you're describing them as wearing Chico's brand clothing. Chico's isn't that buttoned up. What if we said that they were Ann Taylor Loft instead, to use an example from a previous show? I got to go see one of the run-throughs last night, and the set is most of the way built, but what's on the set are some absolutely gorgeous paintings from Bernie Richards, who's doing our set paintings. And that has so many things pinging off in my brain because I'm only just starting to pull things. But having those paintings was so inspiring because it's pulling a whole bunch of things out of my brain that I would otherwise not really have thought of to bring into this world, to complement colors, to complement energies, and to really start playing with these characters and fleshing them out into full-blown people. So there's a very specific example of this in DELLA DOUCET, which I've started referencing in my head as fantasy 80s New York, because this is set in 1981. And they very clearly state that at the very beginning of the show. So here's the thing about 1981. In 1981, Vivienne Westwood came out with the infamous Pirate Collection. And it was a huge dramatic break from what everyone saw as the punk scene of the late 70s into the 1980, which is the tartan bondage pants and the corsets and the safety pins and all of these things that we think of when we think of 80s punk. But the reality was, at that time, people were going wildly to the other direction with the corset tops and the big flowy pirate shirts, the loose pants with the tight boots up to the knees, and that whole vibe. That being said, the show then, of course, references the tartan bondage pants and all of those things in the show, even though that's not actually what people might be aspirationally trying to wear in the art scene. We have in our head what we think of as punk, but punk actually has a wild evolution through the 80s. When you get to things like Madonna's Like a Virgin, which is kind of a nice division of the two, you've got the punk makeup, you've got the punk hair, but then the clothing is very New Romantics with the corsets and the big fluffy skirts. So having something that's so early gets a little bit tricky because you want to show something that the audience is going to recognize as at least vaguely referencing what we all think of as punk, but you don't want to abandon what was actually going on. Playing with the fact that you've got Della, who is this Southern Belle transplant, and this is kind of where the fantasy New York feeling comes in, who is going to be, to my mind, a little bit more of the New Romantic punk versus the hardcore punk of the 70s. I mean, it depends on what you think of as an Easter egg. I love to put Chuck Taylors in a show, which works beautifully for this show because there are very few things more punk than a good pair of plaid Chuck Taylors. If it's a show that I've designed and it takes place after 1900, look for the Chuck Taylors. So I've been Susan Rahmsdorff-Terry, the costume designer for the world premiere of DELLA DOUCET at Vintage Theater, premiering August 23rd. And I hope you'll join us for this trip back to fantasy New York.